My name is Ethan Wolf. I've been with City Guide for the last 8 years. I'm the editor of the magazine on your tables and in your hotels. And I'd like to welcome our panel. Start out with Deputy Mayor Banks. If we're just, as a format, going to talk for a few minutes about how you came to be where you are and how tourism looked in 2022 and what you're seeing for 2023, what we can expect.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here. The question is, how did I get here? I don't know. I ask myself that all of the time, but I will give a little background. I spent approximately 30 years in the NYPD. I retired in 2014. I was the chief of the department, which was the highest ranking member at that particular time here. Mayor Eric Adams is elected. I had a working relationship back, as he is also a former member of the NYPD. And then he asked me to come back and work in the administration because there had never been a deputy mayor of public safety. And what he wanted to do was to take all of the agencies that fall under public safety and then make sure that there's a coordination and that they were feeding off their own synergy and energy together. And it was his opinion that they were operating in silos. So he says, hey, how do we take that and kind of coordinate it together and just put it under one person? And that's the poor church of words. Let me back that up. Not under one person, but one person to help coordinate all of what they were doing. And why did he want to do that? Because he says if we build this eco chamber of public safety, everybody is better off, right? So he created the position. He asked me to start the office and to lead it. And I guess this is how I got to where I am today. When you say look at tourism has been a struggle, right? I mean, we just came off of a major pandemic. It has health implications, it has financial implications, but we still believe in New York City, and this is not my New York City ego, I am born and bred, that it's the best place to come to, right? So the city has an obligation, right? That people want to come to New York City. Well, how do we make them want to go back and tell other people to come here? And that's working in partnership and just making sure that we create a canvas where people say, I want to come to New York City, I'm going to come to New York City, I'm going to come back to New York City. So we're certainly a support. And how do you support? You listen. And I think the mayor's one of the best listeners I've ever dealt with. You can say a lot of things to him. You go, hold on, what'd you say? As I'm trying to slip something on him. Yo, stop what you say. So he's very attentive. And he always says to the staff, you have to listen. We are here to work. We're here to serve other people. Listen, because they know what their needs are better than we will ever know. Listen and be in a position to support. And hopefully that we did a relatively decent job in 2022. There were a lot of challenges. But one thing is that we're going to continue to try better. Now, we hear that all the time, right? We're going to do better. But I really do believe that as a mayor who actually really, really listens, and people say, well, you say that because you work for him. I'm saying, no, I wasn't looking to work. I actually do. I've known him for a long time, and I actually really respect him and what his vision is going to be for all industries. But tourism is very, very important. Why? Because when you make money, right, he can tax you. And that money helps businesses. We can hire more people, and the city's better and better. So we just pledged on behalf of the mayor to listen, to communicate, and to do all we possibly can to help you prosper in this industry.
Thank you. And move the mic over.
Hi, good morning. I'm Shanifa Riera, Senior Advisor to the Chairman, Jano Lieber at the MTA, as well as Acting Chief Customer Officer, to build on or answer, the question of how did I get here. Prior to joining the MTA, which is about a year and 2 weeks in, which seems like a lifetime given everything that has been going on, I spent 25 years with the New York City government. Most recently, 8 years at the New York City Comptroller's Office as the Deputy Comptroller for Public Affairs, which is essentially, turning, the most non-sexiest audit reports into, something that is consumable for the external New York City residents and going out and, promoting city services as well as, celebrating different cultural elements. That job was, I was a lot to everyone. It was a very intensive, large portfolio, and since then transitioning to the MTA under Jano Lieber leadership. And through the MTA is an interesting place. I mean, everyone thinks about it through the lens of moving people from point A to point B, but it is so vast. I like to refer to it as a mini country with 70,000 employees, and I mean, this region is so vast. From New York City to the region out on the island to Metro North country and it extending into Connecticut. So there is no shortage of territory and priorities, which we will definitely dive into, which I'm sure many of you want to hear about around our efforts around public safety and those sorts of strategies. As far as 2023 priorities, I mean, I would say similar to the previous panel and what the deputy mayor has mentioned, don't bet against New York. During the pandemic, we lost a third of our ridership. And for those of you who are sort of in this industry, a lot of, whether it's businesses or different companies did not survive. And the MTA, while we were impacted, from, budget cuts and thanks to Senator Schumer for the COVID recovery fund, but we kept our service running 100% for those essential workers. And we continue to climb back week after week, and we are seeing ridership growing. And, through, those opportunities, we have taken advantage of making key major enhancements, which I hope many of you have noticed, whether it is, the renovation of the shuttle over at Times Square, Penn Station, that which I'm sure many of you welcome is underway, as well as the biggest kept secret, which we hope to, open in a couple weeks, is Grand Central Madison. And this all connects on how we can move New York City residents or tourists around. And, like the MTA, again, it is, we are more in all things beyond, transportation.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Tom Harris. I'm the president of the Times Square Alliance. How I got here, I think there are a lot of people asking that question. How did he get there? And I kind of ask it to myself every day. But I've been with the Times Square Alliance for 15 years now, the last 2 years as the president. I had different roles from director of public safety to vice president of operations, COO. Business improvement districts, there are 76 of them in New York City. We are one of them. I have a couple of peers in the room, Fred and Matt, and we basically exist to make our areas clean and safe, to improve them, and to promote the areas. That's basically the four functions of a business improvement district. And prior to being at the Times Square Alliance, I was in the New York City Police Department for over 23 years, mostly in Brooklyn. So I had the pleasure of working with Deputy Mayor Banks. I don't know that he would describe it as a pleasure, but we definitely worked together in Brooklyn. Some of the other questions just on the sheet. Review of 2022. 2022 was a great year in Times Square. We had a lot of firsts, a lot of comebacks. We sort of told the greatest comeback story. We went from 365,000 people a day in Times Square to 35,000 people almost overnight. And we had a steady increase in those pedestrian counts, steady increase in businesses being open. We went from 95% open to 13% of them open. We're at 85% now. So I would say that 2022 was the year of 85%. We heard that from I think Fred talked about 85%, and we're about 85% back. And the problem is that our expenses are 110%. So we really have to figure out how to get to that 110%. No one wants to go back to 2019, and I'm always encouraged when we get in a room like this with people who are so dedicated to an industry that we are going to get there. Some of our challenges and our issues. So bids are mostly responsible for public space management. And there were a lot of challenges with COVID and the pandemic with public space management. When everyone sheltered in place, our most vulnerable were left on the streets, especially in Times Square. And we tried to be, instead of being problem spotters, we tried to be problem solvers. So for every challenge that we had, we came up with a solution. We came up with a program to do proactive outreach. I think proactive is the operative word over the last 2 years in Times Square. We didn't sit back, we were proactive. We formed a partnership. Strategic partnerships are our bread and butter, with the Midtown Community Court, with Center for Court Innovation, with Fountain House. We provided outreach to the mentally ill and unhoused. We reduced street homelessness in Times Square by 2/3 and provided services to over 400 people. So that was a plus. So there were a lot of takeaways and ways that we have moved forward. The next thing was public relations. So the first thing that I did was hire Christine at Nicholas and Lentz, because we didn't do a good job of telling our story. We were very defensive. Something would happen, we would react to it, and I wanted to get ahead of it. And we've done a great job, I think, of countering the negative narrative. I also hired a director of marketing. I didn't replace myself at the Alliance, but I hired a director of marketing because that was important. We've done 6 proactive marketing outreaches, including partnership with NYC and Company, City Media, the list goes on and on. Crime, I think we're going to talk about that in the next section. We have to find a way to talk about crime. It's an issue that's not going away. We sort of know how we got here, and we're afraid to talk about how we're going to move forward. And I just want to give credit to Deputy Mayor Banks and to Mayor Adams. They have started proactive policing again. We are a lot better now than we were 6 or 8 months ago. They have restored the Times Square unit to the highest level in the history of the unit. We have 133 dedicated officers. And so for every sort of challenge, there was an opportunity that we seized. The threats to the area, we need to figure out, like I said, how to talk about crime, how to come together. We need to find that Goldilocks zone. We hear too much from one side and too much of the other. We have to come together as a community, come together as a neighborhood. And if the neighborhood works together, it's going to work. If the city works together, it's going to work. And I think I'm probably out of my time.
Thank you, Tom. And that's a good segue, because my first question is for the panel about crime. As Fred mentioned earlier, New York City is the safest large city in the country, and by some measurements, it's safer than any other place in the country. And my question is, when I get direct feedback from our tourists, usually their number one concern is crime in Midtown and Times Square, all through the city. And my question is, how do we address that perception versus reality? What's the message for the marketers in this room about the safety of New York, and how do we convey that?
You know, it's a very good question, and you won't get an answer as good as the question. I just want to let you know now. But me and Tom spent a lot of time together. We worked together in NYPD for a long period of time. And when it comes down to crime, 95%, I think the statistic is 96 point something percent of people will never ever be the victim of a crime. Just won't be a victim of a crime. So what we're dealing with, by and large, is the perception of a crime. How do we make you feel safe? And this is just my opinion now, my time in law enforcement. The law enforcement community, and not just germane to New York City, hasn't gotten that as right as they've gotten dealing with the crime itself. Because the perception means everything, right? So former police commissioner Bill Bratton, like, he built his profile on broken windows, and that was a philosophy of how people feel, you know, how the environment looks. If the windows are broken, if the streets are dirty, if the lights are out, it just feeds to an environment. So that perception is very, very important. So now, what are some of the things that the mayor has directed us to do when it comes to tourism? Tom has already stated that we have increased the number of officers there. But sanitation, I mean, what we're doing with sanitation is a huge, huge issue when it comes to crime. and with Jessica Tisch, who's our sanitation commissioner, who I'm proud to say used to be a colleague of ours in the New York City Police Department as well, and the innovation that she is actually doing with this sanitation. Illegal vending, mentally ill, people who aren't committing crimes, but from the mental perspective, it leads to an environment of that I am not safe. So the mayor has crafted us to say, hey, and he knows it very well, he is an executive in the police department for many, many years. The most qualified person to lead the city in public safety, is that we have to deal with the perception. People have to go down to the street and they have to feel as though I am safe, because 96% of the time you are not going to be the victim. But here's one thing I never say, that we're the largest big city in America. I've never ever said that my whole time, because the person who is a victim of a crime, that statistic means nothing. And the person who doesn't feel safe, that statistic means nothing. So we're working on this canvas to say that people who are coming into our tourism hubs, and of course we're in the biggest tourism hub in the city, is that they can come in and the canvas looks like that I'm going to go from point A to point B and I'm going to feel safe. And that is as important as anything else, and that's something that we're working diligently on. I would just say this here, I moved to my home in Cambridge Heights in 1991. And there were people outside, they were playing music, and they were drinking, and it was the kids, very harmless. And I said, I'd rather take a burglary once a year if I could just get rid of this quality of life. Take the burglary, fill out the insurance report, because every day it was just consistent. And the mayor certainly understands that the quality of life, the mental impact that it has is certainly on the degradation of this particular city. So we are trying to communicate. And when I say communicate, we are trying to listen as much as we possibly can to be able to say here, because I need to hear and see what you feel so that we can build these strategies to communicate. And hopefully, I like to say that we've made some progress, but some progress is never good enough. We have to continue to make that. And if we continue to be good listeners and work in partnership, I think that we can get there to communicate that.
And to sort of echo what Tom mentioned, I cannot, convey the partnership that the MTA has had with the governor's office, Governor Hochul, as well as Mayor Adams, and Deputy Mayor Banks is constantly talking to Jano Lieber and other MTA leaders to strategize how we can, is again attacking or addressing the issue of perception of crime and safety within our system. About a year ago, there was a launch, based out of the mayor's office, a subway safety plan, and the governor stood with, the mayor stood with Governor Hochul and others to address the growing issue or perception around safety in the system. And through those efforts, the conversation has been growing and evolving. It wasn't sort of this photo op or flash in the pan, as many New Yorkers, are used to from a political standpoint. And I would have to say for, the first time, based off of talking to my colleagues in MTA's recent history, the partnership with City Hall, the partnership with the governor's office, it is real, where we are constantly communicating, strategizing, listening to our customers. We do a monthly pulse survey as well as biannual survey, and safety, or the perception of safety, has been, number one and number two for the past year. So, these partnerships have led to real strategic planning and the implementation of real changes. The mayor constantly talks about omnipresence and having police officers, whether they're on the platform, within the station, has been met with gratitude, and it has made a big difference. And, through our partnership and efforts, and again, addressing those issues around perception, our conductors are now making announcements, which I hope many of you or all of you have heard about, officers being present on the platform and giving our customers an opportunity to raise or convey any sort of issues that they may see or that may arise in the system. We are also using our digital assets through the screens to allow customers to report to us in real time issues that they may be seeing in the system, so we can address those issues in real time. And again, that is in partnership with City Hall, because it is a true collaborative effort. We have also deployed, through different funding stream, gate guards, because fare evasion is a major issue, and as Jano Lieber and others have mentioned, that is where we oftentimes see a lot of bad actors entering the system. It is not lost on many of us. A lot of bad actors fare evade, and through the efforts of NYPD, we have been able to apprehend a lot of these bad actors. Most recently, unfortunately, some have been equipped with, illegal weapons, so forth and so on. And we are also using for the first time, the MTA PD, which patrols our commuter rails, into 4 New York City train hubs to complement the efforts of the MTA, again, building on that omnipresence approach. So, these are some of the small efforts that we're building on. And to speak on the mental health issue, another component that we have put in place is our end-of-line operation. Before there was sort of like a whack-a-mole approach where they're, chasing these folks in need across the system. And we have now created a targeted strategic operation at the end of line at some of the existing train stations, where we have clinicians, nonprofit leaders, MTA personnel, as well as NYPD, where we're talking and engaging with these folks. Living in the subway system is not a place to live with dignity, and oftentimes these folks need the support and the coaching to get out of the system and get into the much needed, get the much needed support and resources. So these are some of the things you may see and feel, but again, the collaboration with Deputy Mayor Banks and others, we continue to monitor these issues daily and strategize and refine how we can sort of make our system appealing and attractive to our customers as well as tourists.
Thanks. So crime is our first, second, and third priority in Times Square, but it needs to be all of our first, second, and third priority. We didn't get here by accident. It was a very deliberate course of action that got us here. And just to take you through history, in 2015, we started not to focus on quality of life enforcement in New York City. In 2016, we decriminalized a lot of things. In 2019, we had bail reform and discovery reforms, and then we had a pandemic and a social justice movement. There's no doubt that the criminal justice system was broken, and it needed to be fixed. I question the way it was fixed, and we can go backwards. We can go forward by going backwards and learning. By focusing on the smaller issues, we turned the city around in the 90s. We need to have that focus on the smaller issues, but it has to be with more than just the police department. The police department was the solution for every problem in New York City, and I think that was one of the challenges, and part of it is because they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We need all of the city agencies working together to solve the challenges. We need to see what the challenge is on the street, whether it's an unhoused individual, whether it's someone who has a substance abuse problem, and we need to find the resources to address that problem. And I think that the Midtown Community Court, we're blessed by the Center for Court Innovation and the Midtown Community Court in the Times Square area that focuses on alternatives to incarceration. So we need to do that. When we looked at the higher profile incidents in Times Square, 25% of them were committed by people with mental health issues, and 43% were committed by repeat offenders. Mayor Adams has an initiative, a mental health initiative, that he's going to need support with the state. We need to call our elected officials and say, this matters to us. We need to support that. Repeat offenders, 43% of the high-profile crimes in Times Square. Governor Hochul's doing her State of the State address. I heard that there's going to be some talk about bail reform. It's probably not going to be enough. We need to call our elected officials and tell them that this matters to us. Public safety is a team sport. We're all on the field fighting to win, and we can't be silent. We have to speak up. Staying silent, I think, moved us a little bit too far in one direction. We need to find that Goldilocks zone and work with our elected officials, work with Mayor Adams, work with Deputy Mayor Banks to get there.
And so hand in hand in terms of tourism experience with perception of crime comes cleanliness. I know we've made some strides in Midtown of late, but I'm curious what initiatives are ahead. Mayor Adams has done a lot this year, but what else can we look forward to in terms of a clean city and how that impacts tourism and tourist perception?
I'm going to get in trouble with my next comment, but I actually think that clearly one of, if not, certainly at that level, the picks that he picked for the Sanitation Commissioner was Jessica Tisch. And I may be a little biased because we did work together in the NYPD for such a short period of time, though she's not a uniformed NYPD employee. But the innovation that she has come out with, we're on a call every Monday, and with all of the agency heads, and when it's Jesse's time to talk, everybody sits back and says, because there's always something coming out, whether it's dealing with the rats, whether it's changing the actual bins, the time collection of which we're putting the garbage out, in which the garbage are not coming back in, inspection of different facilities. She's going to be taking over, I don't know if I can announce this now, but she's going to be taking over something that you're going to be very happy about real soon, that's going to improve quality of life in the city. So there's just a host of, like, Jesse has me and her have a saying that we say, the answer is yes, now what's the question? Because she certainly has a can do. And what she said when I said, Jesse, you want to be the Sanitation Commissioner? And she says, you know, what is the one thing that affects everybody in the city? She said, it's sanitation. She says, and it so much correlates to public safety. And she just has a host of, like, we can't even keep up with her because there's something else that's coming out, right? You know, she has this thing about rats. The rats don't run the city, and her mission is to rid the city of rats and to make sure that the trash is picked up. If it has to be picked up twice a day, it needs to be picked up twice a day. And I think that she has done, as well as many other agency heads, I think people are seeing, we're seeing the minimum amount of calls come in complaining about sanitation. I mean, there's a direct correlation that some people feel that the city is safer and safer. So there's just a host of things coming out from just the amount of time that you have to keep your garbage out. I mean, I used to keep my garbage out at a certain time, and then sanitation would come 10 hours later. So it's like, no, you can't take it out and put it out. You're going to put it out in a certain time frame. We're going to pick it up because then we won't even have that visibility. So I can almost say with almost like a complete guarantee that there's one thing that everybody is going to be able to say is that the city is going to be a much, much cleaner. And I actually put that right at the shoulders of the Sanitation Commissioner, because it does have a bigger impact on public safety, I think, that most people will realize. But here's one thing I like to throw out as well. There was an exercise, and Tom may not remember this, that when they sent some of us to training, and it was an exercise that people go away, and the exercise is that you're on a helicopter crashes, and you're in less than 30-degree weather for 3 months. What do you take off of the helicopter in order to survive? And everybody took the test. And then they put you into a group, and you took the test as a group. And according to the statistics, no one scored better individually than he did as a group. The group always scored better from a survival point of view. So the lesson that we learned was that, one, you don't know everything. Two, you don't know as much as you know. And 3, if you listen and you actually work with other people, you can actually accomplish the mission. So I say that to say here, if you have an idea, if you have a suggestion, get it into the city. Hey, why don't you guys try this? Did you ever think about doing this? Because there's no man or woman behind the curtain. There's no Wizard of Oz. These are people who are giving us ideas, suggestions, we're soliciting. What would you do differently? What should we try? And if you can help us contribute to that, then I am like overly confident that we can actually have a city that we're all proud of and is continuously getting better.
That's a good note for us to wrap this panel on, and a good reminder of why occasions like this are so important. That we are stronger as a group than as individuals. And I'm now going to turn over to my colleague, Vincent Timpone, for our next panel. I'd like to thank this panel.